Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Tena Mam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Our subject is seeing God with open eyes. We come across these terms in religious literature. In the Gospel of Ramakrishna, we read again and again about God realization being the goal. Sometimes we speak about spiritual enlightenment, nirvana. There are many different terms used. And if we need to kind of boil down what all these terms mean, in one way or another, it means a way of seeing the truth, seeing the reality, seeing God. In Sanskrit, they call it Ishwar Darshan. Ishwar is the Sanskrit word for the divine, the supreme one. Darshan is seeing. So oftentimes when we even visit a temple or go for a pilgrimage, we speak about going for darshan. So seeing and seeing the divine is in one form or other, this idea comes in spiritual texts. And seeing is different from merely believing in something. In Swami Vivekananda's teachings, we come often this idea that religion is not simply believing in certain things or acknowledging certain teachings to be true, but actually experiencing it, actually seeing it. And so seeing goes beyond believing. But we might say we see so many things, of course. Most of our lives, our eyes are open except when we are sleeping and when we are trying to meditate. And so we see many things. What is so special about seeing God? Is seeing God just one of the many things we see? Or what is it that makes it special? And one way of understanding that is a general understanding about that being, that reality, that truth we call by the name, generic name God, is that God is the source of everyone, including ourselves. So in seeing God, we are actually seeing the source from which we all came. And in that way, seeing God is in some sense seeing the essence of who we are. And that's why the word self gets used in these texts very often. So if I'm this little self here, then God is this supreme self, the supreme being behind this entire creation. And a lot of religious philosophy based on how is this little self of mine connected with that large cosmic self. That's how these different schools of philosophy have come. We call it dualism, qualified non-dualism, non-dualism. Essentially, if we believe that this little self and that God's self are eternally separate, related but separate, then generally we classify that way of thinking as dualism. If I think that this little self is separate but also a part of the divine in some form, then we call it the interim stage of the qualified dualism or qualified non-dualism, which has elements of it of being separate, but also elements of being a part of a larger whole. And then there is this other way of looking that this little self and that big self, while they look very different, if we kind of look deeply into them, then we might discover that they are one and the same. the difference between you go to a ocean and fill the ocean water in a small jug of water, then apparently the ocean looks much bigger than this little jug of water that I have. But if I look deeply and I find that the water in the jug and the water in the ocean is one and the same, there is no difference in that. So these are just general ways of understanding our relationship with God. But whichever way we think of God, seeing God would mean seeing in some way either my own self or something that is intrinsically connected with myself. Now, of course, as we saw in the song that we just sang, that seeing is not simply through eyes, of course. Eyes is seeing as a metaphor is used in religious text all the time. But seeing, the sight, the sense of vision that we have is only one of the five senses that we have. And so the song also speaks about hearing the divine voice through hearing. And so in religious texts, we see that yes, seeing God is one thing, but also, for instance, devotees of Krishna can say, I'm hearing the Krishna's beautiful play on the bansuri, the flute. And sometimes yogis describe experiencing that transcendent in some form through some divine fragrances coming and so on. And sometimes people have just felt the divine touch. So in many different forms, this touching the presence of the divine can occur. So language being what it is, you speak about feeling the touch of God, seeing God, hearing God's voice. So we use all these different ways. So seeing in that sense is only one way of describing, of getting in touch with the divine through any of our senses. What it does imply is a direct contact, direct experience of God. Now, as I said, most depending on how much we sleep, we would think that most of our life, our eyes tend to be open. So of course, some people even sleep with eyes open, but most of us close our eyes when we sleep. It's possible to pray and meditate with open eyes, but generally we tend to close them. And so, except those times, the rest of the time our eyes are open. And so the question often becomes, we often think of the supreme reality as omnipresent, as being everywhere. And the paradox of our life is that how come that reality which is everywhere, we generally don't see it anywhere? How come someone who is everywhere can't be seen anywhere? And so the effort of the human mind is to say, let me at least try to see God somewhere. If I'm able to see God at least in one place, in one form, in one symbol, then there is hope that if I can see it in one place, maybe with a little bit of more effort, I might be able to see it in 2 places, 3 places. So at least we have to start somewhere. And most of us who see ourselves as religious or spiritual, we do have such something in our life where we are able to feel the presence of God more than in other places. It might be a place of worship. It might be a temple or a church or a synagogue or a mosque. Or it could be in the words in some text. We're just able to feel God's presence more strongly. But in some way, we want to experience the presence of God. But when we generally keep our eyes open and look outside, where we should be seeing God, we don't see God. We just see the material world. There is a Upanishadic one passage in the Upanishad called the Kathopanishad, which has a little bit of a slight hint of a complaint. It just begins by saying that this Supreme Being almost kind of destroyed us, or destroyed the senses by projecting them outward. When we were born, I don't think any of us remembers being given a choice. What kind of a body you want? Or what kind of, at least now, if you now this iPhone is released, you want to buy a gadgets, sometimes they'll have more than one model of it. And so different things will have different features. We have some choice about what kind of a gadget we want and what features it has. But when we are given the human body, it's just one model, 5 senses, 2 eyes, and all of those things. We didn't have any choice as regards the features of it. And therefore, we were just born with these 5 senses. And these 5 senses, by this time all of us know, are very good at going out and picking up sight, sound, smell, touch, everything. They are perfect. We don't have to make any extra effort. I just need to open my eyes and all the color and the sights and sound automatically come in. Unless I put a very good quality noise cancelling headphones, all kind of sounds will come in. So the senses are very good at going out. And therefore, we don't need to make any extra effort to see what's outside. It just happens. But if God is someone from whom we have all come, if God is someone who is some of the books say, the only reality, the only existence, if God is someone who is everywhere all the time, how come we don't then see God through any of our senses? And because of that difficulty, this same verse from the Upanishad that I quoted says, the Sanskrit goes like this, Paranchikhani vyatrinat swayambhu tasmat parang pashyati. Because the senses are going outward, we naturally see what is outside. Na antaratman. We are not able to see what is inside. Then, a lot of effort may have been done in the past, God knows in some prehistoric times, to try to figure out the source of this world, the cause of this world, all the questions we have of the ultimates. And at some point, at least some people realized no amount of looking out and trying to understand the universe, while it has wonderful things that we can learn from, there's a lot to explore in the external world. In the ancient time, they just explored this planet. Now, thanks to technology, we are able to explore even further apart in the galaxies and so on. But not too long after this inquiry began in ancient times, at least some people realized no amount of external exploration will give us the truth that we are seeking for. That is when they turned the sight inward. That's the 3rd and 4th line of that verse says, Kaschid dhiraha, some brave soul, pratyagatmanam aikshat, pratyagatma, the inner self, wanting to see the inner self, avritta chakshuhu, shut the senses and then try to look inside. And with that concerted effort to look within, Avrita chakshuhu amritatvam icchan. So such a person seeking that immortality, seeking the answers to the question, looked inside and beheld the truth inside. Now, that's what, of course, all of us try to do. When we try to pray, when we try to meditate, we find it so much easier, although still difficult, but a little bit easier to then close our eyes. And essentially what we are trying to do, we don't succeed always. What we are trying to do is, as much as possible, shut the doors to the senses. Now, although when I say senses, I'm pointing to the eyes are not exactly the sense of sight. This is more a doorway, because sometimes a person may lose a sense of sight by some damage to the optic nerve, but the eyes will still be there, just the person won't be able to see. So the sense of perception is not simply the eye. This is only the external doorway. Similarly, those who are hard of hearing, their ears don't disappear, but the door is there, but something inside, the auditory nerves are damaged maybe. And so when we speak about the senses, we should not, although we use the terms such as eyes, ears, and so on, the senses themselves are subtle. The senses are not a part of this body. The senses are a part of what they say the inner instrument, the antakarana, the subtle body. And so we then try to shut the external, the doorways to it, and it does help. So when I shut this, at least the sights and colors and sound disappear. If I go and try to meditate in a quiet space, all the sounds are reduced. And if I try not to eat while meditating, then at least my taste buds are not so much active. So we try to do the best we can. And we do succeed to a limited extent. But even then, even after I shut out the material world as much as I can, I look inside, still no sign of God. Either we just see darkness, but we see more than darkness. What we encounter inside are just the thoughts, emotions, feelings, my plans for tomorrow, or my memory of what happened yesterday or last year, and so on. So inside, we encounter a world of ideas, thoughts, memories. Now, this inner world of ideas is definitely more subtle than the external world, but it's still a material world. It's still matter, but very subtle matter. And so even when we close our eyes, even when we try to look inside, we haven't shut out the world fully. Well, we have shut the gross, tangible parts of the material world. The subtler parts of the material world are still inside. And the challenge is to go even beyond that. The reason, therefore, why we look inside first to see God is recognizing the power of that which is subtle to control that which is more tangible. A lot of the gadgets that we have, those gadgets would be useless if there wasn't some kind of a software, something more subtle, which is really making those gadgets move. And so what we are trying to do is catching hold of something more subtle so that we can control that which is gross. And so we have to recognize the power of the mind over the body. Today, of course, we know already that most of the illnesses people have are psychosomatic in nature, that the body and mind act and interact upon each other. And the reason body and mind are able to act and interact upon each other is both are material. One is gross matter, tangible, the body, the physical body. The mind is seen as a subtle matter, but because they both belong to the same reality, the same material reality, they are able to act and interact upon each other. And so if we have a good hold over our mind, then it's so much easier, even from the point of one's physical health. And so therefore, we need to pay as much attention to the mind than to the body. In fact, I would go to the extent of saying we should probably pay more attention to the mind than the body. Pay attention to both. But yes, physical health is important, but mental health is even more important. Because if we just have a strong body, which is good, but if the mind is weak, then simply a strong body will not be enough for us to help meet the challenges of life. When Swami Vivekananda spoke of the ideal person, he said, what we want are muscles of iron and nerves of steel. Now, muscles of iron you'll get when you go to a gym and do some good workouts. But nerves of steel, they don't come through going to a gym. They making our nerves strong, that needs an inner work. And that inner work would mean living with some values, some principles, living truthfully, living honestly, living with an unselfish mind, not putting oneself ahead of others. Because those who are selfish, those who are egoistic, those who live without any ethical foundation, such are the people who suffer most. Apparently, outwardly, sometimes it may appear as if these people are successful, are able to go ahead and browbeat their way in life. But inwardly, such people are extremely weak. They a lot of times in life, those who bring suffering to others in one way or the other, those people are not happy. Those who are suffering, they tend to, the way they think, the way they do, they spread suffering. Those who are happy, so you see, it's like this. Sometimes people go too much out of their way to make everyone happy. And I think that's probably putting the cart before the horse. The goal is to, first of all, be happy, a happy person oneself. If I'm happy, truly happy, not just making a show of happiness, really happy inside, then the way I speak, the way I meet with people, the way I talk, the way I do everything will automatically spread happiness. I don't have to go out of my way to appear or be loving. We just have to develop a real love in the heart. Then that love will automatically overflow outside of us. And that's the idea here. So taking paying special attention to the mind is really doing service not only to oneself, because it is then through this mind that this body will function in the world. So taking care of the mind, although this might seem a bit far-fetched, taking care of one's own mind is also taking care of one's own family, taking care of one's own people around us. Because if this mind is distorted or troubled, I'm going to do things which is going to trouble other people outside. So if I want to serve other people, I must first serve my mind, make it my friend, not my enemy, as the Gita says. And all the yogas that we often study and talk about, whether it's Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga, the main purpose of yoga is this purification. It begins with self-purification. It's only when the mind is purified that it acquires that clarity. Mind is, you can think of in terms of a windshield when we are driving a car. We know that if the windshield is completely clean, then we are able to see things clearly. If it's very dusty and dirty, then if your windshield wipers are not working well, then driving can be difficult. And so similarly, the mind is like that. So if I clean the lens of my mind, I'll acquire a clarity. And when I acquire clarity, I will always know in life the right way to think, the right way to do things, the right way to speak, the right way to relate with other people. And once that inner lens is cleaned, the world we see will be very different from the kind of world we are seeing now. How easy or difficult it is to bring about an objective change in the world. Is it possible to change the world? And the answer is, oh, sure, of course it's possible to change the world. If we have the power and the ability to bring about external changes, if I just go out and have a cleaning the neighborhood movement, collect a group of volunteers and clean the neighborhood. And of course it's going to look clean. There is an objective change possible. But if I just do it once in every 50 years, then that neighborhood is not going to remain that way. It's going to get dirty again. So external change is possible, but it's never permanent. You always have to keep on working at it. And that's why in every part of the world, in every generation, we need good social reformers. It's necessity. Yes, reformers come and do a lot of good work, but it's not a one-time job. You do something and then after some time things go down again. Then we need another some reformer to come and say, okay, let's go and clean the neighborhood again. So it's a never-ending work, but some amount of work to help the objectively the world is possible. But inside, the change inside is more lasting. And therefore, while we should do everything we can to improve the situation of the world outside, but we need to recognize that if I improve the situation inside my heart, my ability to help outside becomes more. If my inside is not clean, then no amount of external cleanliness will help. I may not be able to even clean the external world in a better way. And that is why the world will change for the person who has changed. It may not change objectively. And I mean, we can see it in, many of us are familiar with the life of Ramakrishna. We see that he apparently, if we go back in time, so 100 or 125, 150 years ago, not too far long ago, he lived in the same planet as you and I did. And that's true with all the great prophets and incarnations. During their contemporaries, saw them as living among them. I mean, in fact, sometimes there were questions whether is this person human or divine. We sometimes think of the avatar, the incarnation, as someone who is on the border that separates divinity from humanity. Sometimes they look very human, at the same time they just feel, no, they can't be just all human. There's something divine in them. And so we have seen it in the lives of these great ones, that although they lived amongst us, like us, the question becomes, did they see the world exactly the way you and I see it? And at least the Vedantic understanding of that is probably not. Their minds, their insight was completely transparent. It was clear. The amount of clarity they had. So when they looked outside, what they saw was very different from what you and I see. We see it in Sri Ramakrishna's conversation. He always says, oh, here's this blissful divine mother, the play of the mother going on. And you just look around and say, where is that play? How come you and I are not able to see it? And the answer is, it's not an objective change, but it's something subjective, because his mind is clear. In fact, he is seeing things as they truly are. And so, no matter how good our eyesight may be, we may think that I'm seeing things clearly, or I'm probably not. And so that's the dilemma in spiritual life, really. If things were illusory, and we knew they were illusory, then that's already a great progress. The problem is, things may not be what they are, but we are made to believe that that's exactly how they are. So that which is not real appears as real. And that which is truly real, my own true divine self, that's only an idea, that's only a concept. And so that is the challenge we have. The world of ideas inside, the hard, cold reality outside, and then the divine that transcends them all. And so when we try to look inside, we need to then concentrate, try to go beyond these ideas. Now that's easy to speak about, like just go beyond concepts and beyond ideas. And that's not easy to do. And so what we generally try to do is, can we use an idea, use a concept to go beyond concepts? And it's like suppose we want to cross a river and we don't know how to swim, but there is a boat there, a little boat or a rowboat. And so you just go, get into the boat and go across the river. Now, I can't swim. The boat is not really swimming, but I'm just using just the laws of physics to say this can float and I can use all the existing laws to kind of take me across it, and then I can leave the boat behind. And so, just as a boat is a good vehicle for me, my car is useless to take me across a river if there is no bridge. But a boat is the right vehicle to do so. Exactly in the same way, there are certain concepts that can help me go beyond concepts. There are certain ideas that can help me go beyond ideas. There are certain words, there are certain sounds that can help me go beyond sound. And that's the principle behind the japa practice that we have, the prayers that we do, the repetition of the divine name that we do. Yes, the ultimate reality is beyond sound, beyond name, beyond form. But right now, in our present state of evolution, that's all that we have. We are just dealing with forms all the time. We're dealing with sound. Can I use the power of the form, power of sound in a way that will help me go beyond form and beyond sound? And that's what japa really is. When we speak about a chosen deity or Ishta, we have a divine form. When we use a mantra or a prayer, there is this sound, the divine sound. So we are using the power of the sound, the power of the name, and these are special sounds, special forms. And why are they special? Because they are the one who will take me like the boat taking me across the river. The boat itself is pretty useless after that. So once these sounds and forms take us to the place where we no longer need to depend on sound and form, we then enter a realm, not simply of the formless, but that realm which is even beyond the duality of form and formlessness, or beyond the need for sound or even the lack of sound. And that is what practice of japa is. Now, japa, and we oftentimes speak about it as meditation. It's possible to make a slight distinction between the two. When we do japa, there is an effort involved. Clearly, japa is more concentrating on a divine object, in a divine theme, and using these divine supports of mantra, of visualization, and so on. So there is effort involved. There's a willpower involved, the power of the will to stick to just the object of my meditation, just the form, and keep all other forms aside, at least for the time when I'm meditating. Keep all other sounds aside. And when I'm not able to do it, when all other forms come flooding into the mind, all other sounds come in, then we say, I'm getting distracted. I'm not able to concentrate. So what would concentration in this instance mean? It means that I already know how to deal with forms. I'm doing it whenever my eyes are open, even when my eyes are closed. Even in dream, we are dealing with forms. We know how to deal with sounds. All that japa practice means is I'm already familiar with forms and sounds. In the next few minutes, I'm just going to hold on to one form and one sound. And if I can do that well, because of the power behind that, these forms and sounds are not just randomly selected by some committee sitting and saying, oh, let's have these 5 forms or 10 forms. It doesn't happen that way. These forms have been discovered by these great mystics, people who have made these breakthroughs, who have really gone beyond this world of name and form. They have found these certain sounds, and that's the power of the mantra. The certain forms, they are forms like all forms, but they are special in the sense these forms take us beyond forms. So that's how japa, which does require effort, lead into meditation. Now, meditation, in the truest sense of the term, is effortless. Although we say, I want to do meditation, if we want to be accurate with our language, meditation cannot be done. Meditation is something that happens. Meditation is a state that happens. Now, when does it happen? What we can do prayer, we can do japa. Now, if I can do japa with that full attention, with just the divine form, which is the object of my meditation, just this divine sound that a mantra I have, if I'm able to shut out all other sounds and all other forms, then this sound then, on its own, I don't have to do anything. On its own, this sound stops and goes into the sound, beyond sound. The form automatically melts into that realm of the formless. I don't have to do anything. And then we reach that effortless state, and that is the state of meditation. And so, concentration, which we are trying to do, which I said needs effort, that effort becomes a little bit easier if it is backed up by two things. Of course, we have to use our willpower in the beginning, so that because of the all past mental habits of running about here and there with these ideas and that ideas and memories and so on. But in addition to using our willpower, what does help are two things. One, deep faith. That is called Shraddha in Sanskrit. And what is the power of faith? Faith is seeing something which you're not seeing. Now, let me explain. It's like if I'm told, go into that dark room and your friend is sitting there. Now you enter that completely dark room. You're not seeing anybody because the room is completely dark. But you have been told that your friend is sitting in that room. Now, if I have complete faith in those words, then I will walk into that room with this full awareness. My friend is in that room. I'm not seeing my friend right now, but I know my friend is there. So that deep faith changes the way I will then enter that room and try to find my friend. But if I go inside and saying, I don't know, the room is dark, perhaps nobody is there, maybe just I'm fooling myself, and then of course I will never be able to find who is inside. So first, a deep faith, because that's essentially how it is in the beginning. We say, oh, God is sitting in the heart, meditate in the heart. You shut your eyes, try to look inside, darkness. How do I know God is there? I'm just seeing darkness. That's where deep faith comes in. That the scriptures have said that God dwells in the heart. My teacher has told me God is there in the heart. If I have that deep faith in those words, then even though I'm not really seeing God, I'm still seeing God's presence there. And the second thing required is a real longing. Do I really want to see God? And that's really probably the primary requirement. That yes, we speak about Ishwar Darshan and God seeing and God realization. And we need to then at some point look in our heart and say, yes, God realization, again and again people speak about it, Ramakrishna speaks about it. Do I really want it? Or it's just something, it's a good idea, something that I think about occasionally, but am I really hungry for it? And that breakthrough will not come unless and until I badly want it. And many of us might discover that we are good people, we are religious people, we want to see ourselves as spiritual seekers, but we may discover that there isn't really that hunger for God. Maybe the way we are hungry for many things in life, the way we look forward to many things in life, the way we strive for many things in life, among those many things in life, where does God fit in? Is God among things that I strive for? Is God among the things I'm hungry for? Where in that, if I have to make a list of the things I want, things of the I strive, things are the list of things that I feel I must invest my time and energy into. At what number would God come in? And so that intense longing, if and when in the list of things that I'm desperately wanting in life, if and when eventually, and that list doesn't have to be permanent. We know our priorities change in life. That list is a dynamic list. It will keep on changing. Just like when you go to an airport and you're trying to look on the board, when is your flight leaving? And sometimes some flights are delayed and so the list keeps on going up and down. In the same way, our list of priorities might change by circumstances. But when in our own personal list of priorities, when God goes on top, and when we feel, yes, I may want many other things in life, but if I'm ever given a choice that among the many things you want in life, you can just have one thing, what will I ask for? And if we have to think for that answer, then it's still time. But when instantly we just feel, if it's just one thing, I just want God. That would be that intense longing. So if and when we have that kind of intense longing, if and when we have that kind of deep faith, then meditation becomes much more easier. Japa becomes easier. That effort needed to do japa becomes much less. And then that japa transforming itself into meditation on its own, that becomes much, much, much easier. And so the practice of seeing God with open eyes is this, simply. We intensify our inner practice of japa meditation. The more we are able to purify our heart, that's why we see the words. In the New Testament, we read about, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. That's essentially what purity is. If I become pure in my heart, then I will not only see the presence of God here, I open my eyes and I'll see the presence of God everywhere. So that's the practice, that we, whatever amount of time we are able to devote to our practice of japa and meditation, to try to do it as best we can, to be able to feel the presence of God inside, even though we may not be actually seeing God in the beginning. But with that same feeling of the presence of God, then we open our eyes, and as we go about carrying our duties and responsibilities outside, we try to make an effort again. We may not be seeing God the way we are seeing many other things, but reminding ourselves that God is present in every person in front of me. God is present in every object in front of me. You don't have to tell others, but they may not understand. So, I'm seeing God in you. They may think something is wrong. So don't tell anyone. And especially don't tell your teenage children. Then they will never listen to you. But deep inside, just say, I'm trying to see God. I'm trying to feel that the person in front of me, God is present in them. You see, it's like this. All of our interpersonal relationships will be revolutionized. Because if we have this innate love and devotion and respect for the divine, we know that no matter what's going on inside our heads, when we go to a place of worship, when we stand before the altar, there's something spontaneously changes. If we are truly religious, if we have this devotion, when we stand before the altar, we feel different. Of course, if we go outside and then our old self will come out again. But when we stand before the altar, we feel different. Now just imagine if we say, God's altar is everywhere. And every person in front of me, that's an altar of God. So this innate love and respect that we can have for everyone. That doesn't mean we have to be goody-goody with everyone. That's not what I'm saying. There will be situations in life when you may have to be firm, you may have to take some hard decisions, but recognizing that should not stop you from thinking, oh, I'm seeing God now, there's nothing I can do about it. Now, as they say, for instance now, if a physician has to treat the patients who come with different illnesses. Now, and the physician says that I'm going to see God in everyone. And here is the patient who comes and says, this is my problem. Now, how can that divine in that patient be worshipped? You just don't say, okay, now let me bring some arati and do something. That's useless. That's not good. So God who comes to me in the form of a patient, the way to worship the divine is to give right prescriptions, do the right tests. That's the right form of worship. If God comes to you in the form of a very naughty child of yours, then sometimes a little bit of scolding is important. And that's the form of worship God requires in that particular aspect of the divine. So don't hesitate to admonish your children if you want, even while seeing God in them. Those things are not contradictory to each other. But life would become so much more meaningful and joyful if we make an effort to feel the presence of God everywhere that we see. So that's what the effort we will try to make going forward. Trying to see God inside when we are doing japa and meditation, and remembering the presence of God outside as we go about our day-to-day activity. That is what will transform there are these two words in Sanskrit called dhyana, which is often translated as meditation, and there is a nididhyasana, which also comes from the same root as dhyana really, but it is a more intentional and deeper practice. In the I won't go into the grammatical niceties of it, but the word nididhyasana, coming from the same root as dhyana, really means it's more intentional and it's more continuous. So when we don't limit our spiritual practice to only something once a week kind of an effort we make, or just a few minutes in the morning, a few minutes in the evening, because that kind of meditation we do in the morning and evening has a beginning and has an end. And it does good, no doubt about it. But then, as they say, the true religion begins when the sermon ends. It's all easy to feel very uplifted when we are in a place of worship. But what we have learned, it really is put to test the moment we go outside and then have to deal with other people who don't care for your spirituality, don't care for your Vedanta. Even when we are dealing with such people, can I still hold on to my own principles, my own ideas, and try to cover the world with the divine, so to speak? Then to transform this meditation practice as not something just twice a day or thrice a day or once a day, whichever way one is doing it, and to something that is continuous. So, and that's one simple final thought, is that not to think about religion and spirituality as something to be done, because doing needs time, doing needs effort. And yes, we do that effort morning and evening. But spirituality is not something to be done. Spirituality truly is a being. So the goal is not to do spiritual things, not to do some religious acts, which is, I'm not saying it's bad to do them. Of course, it's great to do them. But a better way is to be spiritual. And be spiritual means not only when I'm on certain days of the week or certain times of the day, but that no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing, that every activity, every duty, every responsibility, so long as I'm doing something ethical and moral, then it can be done while being a spiritual person ourselves. So once that mindset becomes different, that's spiritual, being spiritual, not only when I'm meditating, but when I'm going about, that will change us. That is what will help us eventually to see God not only inside, but also outside. So that's the goal. Seeing God with open eyes really begins by first trying to see God with closed eyes, and then opening the eyes and to feel the presence of God outside. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhu.